Yeah, the most authentic influencer for your brand are your customers because they're already using your product, right? When they talk about it, it's natural. And that's authenticity right there. So, where you get inauthentic influencer marketing, and it exists a lot, is just not understanding, choosing the wrong people.
Aloha, and welcome to another episode of the Groundswell Marketing Podcast, where I connect you to outstanding humans and sustainable ideas. I'm your host, Scott Martin, and today we're going to talk about influence, and we're talking with the guy who has written the book. His book is called The Age of Influence by Neal Schaffer. He's a fractional CMO. He's an influencer himself. He's a keynote speaker, incredibly knowledgeable. He's written, other books and publications, and really knows this stuff around marketing. But this influencer thing, he caught me by surprise and gave me some ideas I never really thought of and see influencing in such a different way. And I think you're going to love this episode. So without further ado, let's paddle in. All right, here we are with another episode of the Groundswell Marketing Podcast. Today, we're doing a deep duck dive into the age of influence and influencer marketing with the one and only Neal Schaffer. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. The one and only Scott Martin. It's an honor to be here, my friend.
Actually, there's more than one Scott Martin in this world. I don't even own my own domain.com. Do you own yours?
I do, and I even have my own Gmail.
Oh, geez. Yeah, there's a famous fishing guy that's named Scott Martin that just pushes me down in my influence on social. So I've kind of had to resort to Scott A. Martin as a distinction. So,
and let me publicly apologize to Neal, Neel Schaffer, because I know he gets a lot of tweets sent to him that are meant to me. So yeah, it works both ways.
Yeah, you're probably he probably is getting a lot of traffic thanks to you.
You know what? It's funny. I see his site come up in some of my search engine rankings. I wonder if he's sort of targeting my traffic as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, I wonder how many times that happens with a similar name, and people I remember back in the day, there was people that would buy misspelling of famous, websites and stuff, and they would just basically siphon all the traffic and so forth.
Yep.
People would naturally misspell. I don't know if they still do that or not, but
they do. And I still hit those websites, or you misspell something by accident. It's like, holy smokes, what am I looking at?
Oh yeah. No kidding. Yeah. Danger of the pop-up.
Totally. And more pop-ups.
But plural. Yeah. So let's pop it into what's going on with influence. So, this is our take two. So for everybody that's listening, for Neal and I actually didn't record the first version of this, so I'm embarrassed to say. So we're going to probably reference like things that we talked to before, but we're going to kind of bring it back full circle. The difference in this time around is the first time I was kind of reluctant. I was like, oh man, influence. Tell me why I should pay attention to influence. Because for me, influencers, up until we had that conversation, I kind of had a negative connotation to it. So maybe there's a lot of people listening can relate to this. So we start there. Is like, what is influence? And, why is there, generally speaking, like anything, there's always some sort of stigma to it. But influencers tend to have some, and I have my own opinions, but maybe you can dispel that and sort of kick us off of really defining what your definition of influence is.
Yeah. And Scott, now that this is our second time, I can actually fast track this conversation by saying that social media for businesses is, organically speaking, is dead. Now, you may agree, you may disagree, but on the flip side, you would agree that personal profiles can do really well in social media. And if you can agree with that, you can agree that people more and more yield more and more influence in social media, whereas for business, it's become primarily performance marketing, pay to play. And if you can agree with that, that's only looking at social media. Let's look at YouTube. The biggest YouTube channels, are they businesses or are they people, right? Let's look at podcasts. The biggest podcasts, are they businesses, are they people? The only place where businesses compete and probably beat people is maybe websites, is textual content. But even then, right? If we want to get the word out about our company, We want our business to appear on podcasts, on YouTube videos, on the blogs of others, people to talk about us on social media. That really is the background for understanding influencer marketing, because we're dealing with digital influence on all the channels in all the content mediums. So if you can agree with that storyline, and I'm hoping that most of you listening are nodding, maybe not 100%, you still don't see the connection with influencer marketing maybe. But really what we're talking about here is, and let me just say another thing, you need to completely reset your understanding of influencer marketing, because what you understand now, and Scott, your reaction is like so many I've talked to, they sort of cringe at the word, because they've been led to believe that influencer marketing is, number one, mostly about Instagram, although more recently TikTok and YouTube we hear about. Number two, it's about people with a lot of followers that we've never heard of. And number three, it's all about chasing vanity metrics for something that is completely fake. And then you have the Fry Festival, right? So, we can go on and on about that. That is, a combination of two things: is the industry, the influencer marketing industry I'm not a part of, but that exists. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. They want to monetize other people's influence. In order to do so, they push people with lots of followers, and they tend to equate lots of followers with influence. We know today that's not true, right? So that industry is its own. Even that industry, I think, is changing. But that, I believe, that combined with marketers saying, 10,000 Instagram likes doesn't pay bills. And you're absolutely right. And then what about, then influencer marketing is only for Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter, they're completely irrelevant. It's only for B2C. It's only for people that target young demographics. And that's where I believe the industry and marketers' reaction to the industry is what has miseducated marketers today. Right. So when I realized that there was severe miseducation going on in the market, I realized I had a book to write that ended up being The Age of Influence. But even the influencer marketing industry, to answer your question directly, Scott, but I really want to get buy-in early on. I'm hoping that was a better way of doing it. To answer your question, even the influencer marketing industry has priced themselves out of the market. When you start with only people that have 1 million followers on Instagram, it's a limited pool of people. And those people compete and they raise their prices. So over time, even the influencer marketing industry has broadened the scope of what is an influencer, to the point where they talked about a micro influencer. And there's nothing micro about having 10,000 Instagram followers. Try to launch an account from scratch and build it up to 10,000 followers. It's not a trivial pursuit. And then more recently, over the last year or two, we talk about nano influencers, which are people that have 1,000 followers. Now, they look at Instagram. I say, well, if having 1,000 followers is enough people to have influence digitally, how many people does your business already know that has influence on any given social network in terms of having 1,000 followers? Just as one barometer. It's a random barometer, but it's easy to remember, right? 1,000 followers. Now, what that means is, if you have 1,000 followers in a given network, number one, you have a profile on that network. Number two, you are showing up on that network, because you're not going to gain followers unless you show up. And number three, you're probably publishing some sort of content. Now, it could be your own content. You might be curating content. If you're a salesperson, you might be sharing your company's client as part of an employee advocacy / social selling program. But regardless, you have some digital influence that others would like to tap into, that businesses want to tap into, that has value. And in fact, my 15,000 followers on Instagram, not that vanity metrics pay the bills by any means, but I know on average, I get more engagement on my photos than most of the bigger brands in marketing, social media marketing, tools companies, I think, of, or media sites that have 3-4 times more followers than me. I'm getting more engagement, even though I'm at a fraction of the number of followers. And we see this a lot, that even with 1,000 followers, a lot of people outperform brands. I'm not talking about outperforming Coca-Cola, but for 99% of the smaller businesses out there. So you combine this with the fact that, well, if social media is all about this viral spread of our content, of word of mouth marketing, but we're not getting heard, what do? And most companies have reacted by spending a lot of money on ads. But guess what? There are some ads that do go viral, don't get me wrong, but most of the time, ads don't go viral. They're on, they're off. It costs money. There's more competition. I know some millennials who say, we don't want to do ads. It'll make us look cheap. And people ignore ads, right? And some people don't people don't trust you because you're doing an ad. Why do you need to do an ad if you're that good? So there's a lot of mixed feelings about ads. But if you want to tap into this word of mouth, right? This, I'll use the term groundswell of word of mouth that you want to drive from social. Because today, in this post-coronavirus age we live in, you got to meet the digital consumer, the digital buyer where they are. And it's either search, email, or social, right? And if you're not being heard in social, you got to get heard. And that's where you got to collaborate with other people. And those people I call influencers, which I define are content creators that have over 1,000 followers in any given platform. They're podcasters or YouTubers. They're professors. They're business people. They're employees, right? They might be customers. So in my book, I say, let's not look at influence in terms of number of followers. Let's look at influencers in terms of brand affinity, starting with your employees. And this is where you begin to connect the dots. Oh, I get it. Employee advocacy. And these have failed at a lot of companies because they haven't treated their employees as influencers, right? Or maybe the executives haven't become the influencers that they should at their company. They should be the most influential, right, in social media, if you think about it. And then what about our partners, especially B2B? There's ecosystem partners, distributors, resellers, right? And then you get into your actual customers. And more, because social media is so prevalent today, we couldn't say this 10 years ago, but today, probably a good fraction of your customers are, they're probably a nano influencer on a given platform, right? So, and then you go into your followers, then you go into the social listening tool and look at people that have mentioned you. So you have a whole pool of people that have brand affinity for you, that you can tap into, that have some digital influence. And I believe creating a program and tapping into these people, not just to amplify your content, but to co-create content, to tap into them as a user focus group because they know your brand, right? To me, the definition of influence marketing, that is what it's about. And when you look at it that way, I believe it's the only way forward with social media marketing. And you get to a point where you don't even need to create your own content because your fans are creating it for you. This influencer program is creating it for you. And guess what? That content's going to do better on organic social. It's going to do better on your paid social. It's going to do better on your website. It's going to convert people better on your shopping cart. So you begin to look at social media, and it is marketing, don't get me wrong, but less as a marketing platform or a advertising or promotion platform, and more as this grand platform to collaborate with social media users with brand affinity. And you can even go out with some who don't and try to convert them. But it's a platform, it's a marketplace of collaboration that you can achieve so many different marketing objectives with. So Scott, I know that was a lot. That's like a 10-minute speech, a 10-minute keynote.
So many things to jump in.
Yeah, but I know
really good. I think that gave a really clear picture of your definition, which is so different from what I think a lot of people's perceptions are.
Yeah, and I just today talked to someone who works at one of these influencer marketing tool companies. She's like head of PR. She bought my book, loved it. She's recommending to everyone in the company. And even she's like, we have to convince people of the ROI of influencer marketing ourselves. So I do believe it really is misunderstood. And that's why I'm really excited about the book. There's just so much potential. And it could become, it's not something you have to outsource. In fact, it's best if you do it yourself because it's representing your brand. I know there are agencies out there, and obviously if agencies are going to do this, they want to work really hand in hand with the brand. But I believe it's an exciting opportunity for brands, for agencies to offer this as a service, not pushing influencers no one's ever heard of, but really tapping into the CRMs, the shopping carts, the followers, the employees, and really bringing this all together into a program that I think is really going to drive results that are measurable.
Well, I think one of the things that we talked about last time that bears just some quick discussion, you had some good response on it last time too, which is my perception was that someone who's you pay to be an influencer, they are unauthentic because they're more or less, they have their following and they go, oh, hey, look, I'm golfing with these golf shoes. You know what I mean? And so I guess for me, what in my mind's eye about seeing maybe some poorly executed campaigns, that's where my brain went. But when we talked about it in a little more depth, I think we came to the conclusion that it's about synergy and identifying influencers that share your common values and or maybe already are using your product and so forth. And you had a lot of really good ideas and clarifications around that. And I wonder if you could just share with us a little bit about how to identify maybe authentic influencers and why that's so important.
Yeah, the most authentic influencer for your brand are your customers because they're already using your product, right? When they talk about it, it's natural, And that's authenticity right there. So, where you get inauthentic influencer marketing, and it exists a lot, is just not understanding, choosing the wrong people. Now, I know we have a lot of agency listeners, and there's some awesome agencies out there. There are also others, and I have an experience working with a business book author, and they work with an agency. And this is, a few years ago. This is a business book author who is targeting CEOs and CMOs of Fortune 1000 companies. And they were like, they were handling their Facebook and Twitter. They go, you need to be doing influencers. And so he sent me a list of the influencers the agency recommended. And they were like 20 and 30 something lifestyle, skateboarders, surfers. And it was a complete mismatch, right? So relevancy is key more than anything, because even if this business book author was to pay some money to work with this famous skateboarder, right? What value is that going to have when the skateboarder talks to a community who follow this person because of their skateboarding? When he introduces a business book, it's just going to be a complete mismatch, and it will be inauthentic. And hopefully the skateboarder will be smart enough to say, you know what, this isn't relevant to my community. I don't want to work with this business book author, right? So the best content creators are those that understand their community, and they will tell you this is not relevant. Scott, I'm sure you get pitched. People want to be on your podcast all the time, same as me. If you think it's totally irrelevant to your audience, you're going to say no, right? So right there, if you see a content creator and every day of the week, they're pushing some other product, right? They're pushing competitor product A, B, C, D, E on Monday through Friday. That person is clearly just doing this for the money. And if I'm a follower, I'm confused as to, what does this person actually recommend, right? So the best influencers are not doing that. The worst influencers are, and they're the ones who are using pods in inauthentic ways to get inauthentic engagement to back up their inauthentic content. So when we take a step back from that picture, right, we need to find relevance. I believe that your customers are the most relevant, but if you're a startup, you don't have customers, right? So you look to, who is out there that's talking about similar things? And on any given social network, it really begins with doing a search. So I want to color my hair. It's work from home. I have some gray hair. I want to cover it. What should I find? What should I do? I'm going to go to Google, right? Do some searches, might find some blogs. I might go to YouTube because I want to see some how-to videos. When I'm on Instagram and I'm bored, I might do a search for cover gray. I don't know. I'm not saying that I have like gray hair I want to cover. I'm just as an example, right? But this is the thing, is that social media users inevitably do searches. They find people, they follow them. And these people become more and more influential. So start with a search. If you were a user, put yourself in a user's shoes and you wanted to be influenced on something, do a search and see who comes up, right? See who has more followers, more content, more engagement. And I think from that, and there are tools you can use that can help accelerate this, but I really want you to do this before a tool. Do a search, see who comes up, and see, do they seem like a natural fit for your brand? In other words, if they were to talk about your brand on their feed, would it be natural? And what's going to happen is I may find someone who talked about how they used hair dye to cover their gray hair on one post, but the other 99 posts are about the fact that they're fanatical Boston Celtics fans, right? That's a mismatch. It's partial relevancy because they've talked about it before, but that's not their main focus, right? Content creators create content around an area, and that's where they gain their influence. It's like the men's fashion company reaching out to me because all of my social media profile pics have me in a suit, and they want to offer me a free suit if I share it on Instagram. It's like my followers don't really care about my fashion perspective. It's going to be a waste of your money and a waste of my time, and I'm going to get dinged on engagement, so I'm not interested. So it's really finding that match. It's marriage, right? But I believe so many people are active on social media today, even if it's a niche B2B thing. I mean, it may not be Instagram, it might be LinkedIn or Twitter. You're going to find someone. You're going to start to find a group of people, a pool of people. Start with 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, right? Depending on your industry. And that's really where you start, right? And then plug them into your brand affinity, right? Wow, this person's already on my email list. Wow, this person's already a customer. You're going to be surprised. And I had a client that did this. They go, holy smokes, this guy with 165,000 followers verified on Instagram, they're our customer, right? And they didn't know until they went through the exercise. And for all you savvy marketers out there are email appending tools. So if you have an email address, you can use an appending tool to get their social media profile URL and start to build that database, right? But that's really the best way to start. There are influencer marketplaces, there are influencer tools that have, proprietary databases where they only search for certain people. I think the best way to do it is raw yourself by starting with those searches and see who pops up.
What's the line between, like say you're going to go find somebody that has a group not able to get your customer list, we'll say.
Okay.
And let's just say I've got a hypothetical company, which actually is a real company. It's an orthotic company, and they're trying to reach people who are in golfing, like the golf industry. And they're talking about going to a platform to find an influencer. Now, the challenge is, do we just like sponsor them? Or how do you I think the one word you're using is a content creator. Does the influencer need to be naturally and a good quality individual in terms of they're generating content to qualify, or what is the criteria that you see as being relevant? So if I was going to go and try to find a influencer in golfing, and I wasn't going to go to my customer list, how would I verify, outside of size of list or celebrityism?
I would first look at, you're looking for people that are talking about golfing, that are consistently talking about golfing. That's the first one, right? So like I said, you're going to find people, like maybe I went to the putting range yesterday, but out of 2,500 Instagram posts, there's only one about golfing that you happen to find, but it's not relevant in terms of the whole picture, right? Mm-hmm. So you're going to do searches looking for people that talk about golfing consistently. You're then going to you're going to find male golfers. You're going to find female golfers. You're going to find teenage golfers. You're going to find senior citizen golfers, right? When I did an influencer campaign for a client that was looking for mommy bloggers, there's like 100 different categories of mommy bloggers. There's the mommy blogger who is raising babies. There's one that's raising teenagers. There's one that's specializes in raising children with autism. Another that just focuses on healthy eating. Another that focuses on exercise. And I think with golfing, it's the same thing. And this is really the beautiful thing, is that you can find, if you search hard enough, the perfect avatar, the person that matches. So if our audience is targeting a certain demographic in terms of sex, in terms of age, in terms of location, these are additional filters that then we apply when we start to search people, right? We start to look at where they're located. We can even look at their followers. When people engage with their content, where do these people live? What are their ages? I mean, approximately. And once again, you can use these email pending tools to take Instagram profiles and try to figure out the email address and get demographic information. So and it's all publicly available information, right? So you can be building these databases of people that are talking about golf, and then hyper targeting those that seem most relevant. That I would say, when I talk about having a minimum of 1,000 followers, I would hope that they're getting, 30, 50 engagements, right? Whenever they talk about something. So if they got 100 engagements, great. If they got a few thousand, great. But if you start at that level, and I think the first part is, hey, you may not have heard about us, but we're the next best thing in golfwear, right? And we're so confident you're going to love us. We've seen your content on Instagram. We love it. We're golf lovers like you. In fact, the company was developed because, our CEO thought that why can't golf clothing be more hip? So we created this for urban golfers, men in their 20s and 30s that love going golfing on the weekends, but love the urban life on the weekdays. We created a golf fashion line. And we're, if you're interested, we'd love to just send you, tell us your sizes. We'll send you out a wardrobe, and we'd love to get your feedback. That's really my approach, is to give before you ask, right? You're trying to make friends.
That's what I was going to ask you is do you direct them? Do you say, hey, here's what we're looking for? But you're saying just give before you get. I love it. That's a great principle.
Because what you're doing here, Scott, is you're trying to make friends. And here's where a lot of companies go wrong, is they send these spray and pray, non-personalized messages to 100 golfers. And then they're saying, hey, well, we'll pay you $25 to post, and we'll send you the clothing. It's like, that's, if they're golfing, I assume they have a pretty reasonable, income, and $25 doesn't mean much to them. So, and the thing is, you don't know, right? You don't know. Some of these people might be your competitors. Some of them might be CEOs. I mean, you really don't know. And that's why you want to start with, let's be friends, because we made this for you. And really, you're targeting, what you're trying to do is, I talked last time, Scott, about the 99-1 rule, right? That 90% of internet users are lurkers, 9% are engagers, and 1% are content creators. So you're looking at the top 1% of the internet, and you want to become their friends, and you want to, through that friendship, incite online word of mouth so that it gets out to the other 99%, right? Monetize the 99%. Don't think about monetizing that 1%. Go overboard, get feedback, right? And it's like, hey, maybe some of those people might end up posting without even telling you. They tag you. They go, hey, thanks for sending me these clothes. I love it. Everybody check out this brand, without you even having to ask how much it would cost to post something, right? Because it's human beings. And when you become friends, you have a better chance of converting them into becoming advocates. Others may say, man, I really love to share your clothes. I'm working with another clothing line. They pay me like, $250. What do you think? Are you cool with that? I mean, and you could take it one step further and say, you know what? Now, assuming with coronavirus we can do this, we're good friends with, one of like Jack Nicklaus's designed golf courses in Las Vegas. We're going to fly you and your significant other out for the weekend, and we'll do a photo shoot. How's that? And we won't give you money, but we'll give you tons of creatives that you can use for your own personal branding, right? And you bring other outfits, right? We'll set you up for a full day, and you could bring 10 influencers out to Las Vegas, pay for 10 airfares, 10 nights of hotel, and get literally hundreds, if not thousands of pieces of content showcasing all your clothes at a really, really good looking, golf course in Vegas or wherever in the world you want to do it. So that to me, now you're putting more skin in the game, and now you're getting to meet these people on the golf course in the natural environment. And now you're building relationships because you're taking them around the 18 holes. You're spending a few hours together with them, right? And you're going out to dinner at night and you're having some drinks. Now you're really creating deep relationships. And when you do that, you begin to see that, yeah, they might share content about us, but we can co-create content. They can create all of the content that we need for all of our social media. In fact, for all of our digital media. And we're going to get some great feedback. And maybe out of the dozen influencers that come, 6 of them go, you know what? You really need to create this line in a yellow and green combination color, because that's the coolest looking color. We find that nobody else has that color. You should own that market. And you get this type of feedback when you get these content creators that really know your industry and your market, and they know your competitors. And they won't tell you those things over an email or an Instagram DM. But when you get to know them, that's where you get all this extra information. You begin to see them as this really VIP user focus group, and you become friends with them. And that friendship can really branch into a lot of different areas. So, I say think big. If you want to go big, invest big. You can start at the nano level with people that already know, like, and trust your brand. Or if you want to go out of that, know that these people are being approached by other brands, and you want to be unique, and you really want to be friends. You really want to genuinely say, you know what, the best influencer marketing case studies I see is when the founder reaches out to people like them, says, hey, I developed this for you, right? So I'd be honored if you give it a try. If you like it and you could post on Instagram, it would be great. Make sure you tag us so that we can share it with our audience as well. If not, no worries. Either way, we just love your feedback, right? Well, the clothing's on us. That's the approach that I wish more and more brands would take. But before they do that, they should be reaching out to people, hey, thank you for purchasing, model A, B of our clothing. We love your content on Instagram. We're going to send you C, D, and E. Feel free to post it. And when you reach out to customers, it's just a lot easier because they already love you, right? And when you give them free product, oh my gosh, and they're probably going to sing praises for you and hopefully share on social media as well. So yeah, when you reach out to people who don't know you, it's a little bit different, and I think you need to be a little bit more careful, and you need to be a little bit more giving. But by doing that, you're tapping into that 1% that's hopefully going to spread that word of mouth to get to the 99%. Is the thought process to have for the ROI.
That makes a ton of sense, and the interesting thing is I never really thought of it this way, but I was an influencer for almost a decade. I started the cat skiing blog and heli skiing blog, and for about 10 years I had free heli and cat. I do about 30 days in the backcountry, just filming and writing about that. I actually started getting I wrote, I think, a total of about almost 50 articles in the Calgary Herald and about another 20 or 30 in some national newspapers in Canada about cat skiing and heli skiing in the backcountry. And I just did it just for free cat skiing. I just wanted powder.
And you know what? you were an influencer, and at the nano level, you do find a lot of people because they're not in it for the money. If they were in it for the money, they'd buy fake followers and do fake engagement. So you find a lot more real people. They just do it because they love to do it. And therefore, they're not asking for money. They just want free product, and they'll do a lot for free product. And I think a lot of brands are getting a lot smarter about that and just utilizing free product to incentivize. And for a lot of people, that's enough.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think I had such a good time, and I wanted to get more POW that I would go the extra mile. And they probably got like what might have equated to like, maybe 15 grand worth of film production work that we would do, and we just publish it and just share it. And it was, for me, it was just like, oh, I'm just basically producing my greatest day of heli skiing of all time. So what did I care?
But think of it this way. If you're a brand and you want to target that heli ski market, there's only so many people that talk about it, right? And that's the thing. No matter what it is, there's only so many content creators about a given subject. Now, obviously, some subjects there's more people than others, but when you get down to those niche things, it's finite, right? And therefore, you want to reach out to those people before your competitors do and become friends with them before they do, right?
Oh, so there's an interesting that just came to mind. One of the last trips I did this, mostly all cat skiing, and this Matt who owns a resort, he's like the head of marketing for a group that owns most of the major ski hills, and he invited me to go. And I can't remember what he called it. He called it some sort of like, it was like a content creation 3 days. But what he did was, instead of inviting one influencer, he invited at the same time like 12 people from 12 different places, sort of like your idea of Vegas. And he says, I'm just going to put you guys together and see what happens. And everybody had, like, one person was like, had a drone. Another person was amazing at time lapses. There were 2 girls that were just crazy good with these like macro shots and video shorts and stuff. And, and I don't know why I was there. I was just lucky to be there. And so, but the content they created from was really diverse, but we all collaborated. It was kind of interesting. And he says that's what his new model is to bring influencers as a group. And he says, to see what happens rather than single serving influencers. Says he was able to compound his return on his content efforts. Plus, he could consolidate the investment of the hotel, the ski room, working with the guides and all that stuff. So that was a pretty cool strategy. It just came to me now when you said your Vegas thing. So
yeah, and what makes it really powerful is that you create. I don't know if you created lifelong relationships with these other 11 people. You create relationships, right? And it all revolves around the brand that invited you.
Well,
right.
What's funny about that is, yeah. And to this day, they all have huge networks. They're way even bigger than mine. And they still like my content. And I'm always like, oh man, it gives me such a good bump. So yeah.
And the brand looks great because they brought you together. There's sort of this indebtedness that you feel. And I had a similar experience with All Nippon Airways. They were introducing a new type of service. I speak Japanese and travel to Japan a lot. So they were introducing a new service called Inspiration of Japan. And they wanted to bring on 4 people to be ambassadors for this program. And Callie Lewis, I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's really big in the video world and live streaming. Yukari Peerless and a fourth. And yeah, so we got to fly free on business class on Inspiration in Japan between LA and Tokyo. But more importantly, when we got there, we got to fly on one of the first 2 787s that were the original 787 only flew domestically in Japan on 2 routes before it was introduced here. So we got to fly on a 787, before anyone else did. We got to go to the Haneda Airport maintenance facility and stand in front of these airplanes and hear from the engineers how they maintain them and fly them safely. We got to go to cabin attendant school. And guess what? When we went to the cabin attendant school, there was a major TV show that was filming. So we all appeared on TV in Japan as a product of being in that. And then if that wasn't enough, they had us meet the marketing team that was in charge of creating that Inspiration of Japan concept. And then we did like a 2-hour, digital social media marketing strategy back and forth and sharing ideas and stuff at their corporate headquarters. So,
did you know that in advance, or did that just come to you?
Did not. Well, no, I'm sure they planned it in advance. We did not know in advance all the specific plans. We didn't know all that was going on. We had some ideas that, hey, get ready, be ready at your hotel at such and such in the morning. But it was an incredible, I still talk about it today, right? It was just an incredible way. And they ended up they ended up 1 year later working together with the Okinawa Tourist Board and creating another trip for us. So it wasn't a one night stand, and there was no money. I mean, it was all product service. So just a great example of just going overboard and doing your best to showcase and promote your brand. And really, the best thing you can give people, how many people, Scott, do you talk to? I have a good friend in Baltimore, Andrew Smith, give him a shout out. And he's like, Neal, my wife and I, we're not into things, we're into experiences. And I think a lot of marketers talk about millennials. The number one thing they want is the experience. Same thing with influencers, right? Give them that you're being together with 11 other people, right? Away from home is a really, really unique and deep experience that is hard to beat, hard to replicate. So if you can do that, not just in your influencer marketing, but in your marketing, customer experience marketing, right? The experience is king. And that's something that if you can pull off with your influencer program, you're going to be light years ahead of the competition.
It feels like there's like a mathematical equation in here, like the influencer impact quotient. You know what I mean? Like where you multiply experience times combined total influencers with unique opportunity that money can't buy equals, X amount of, PR or unique attention, because what you've done is you've created something that is special, a moment in time, which also increases the visibility within social. I know there is. I can tell just by what you just described. I was like, there's a pattern here from almost creating like a little mathematical equation for influence in an innovative way. Don't you think?
Yeah. And I was going to say, for those of you that work at B2B agencies and the B2B marketers, it's the same thing. Those experiences are conferences. They're events, right?
Right.
I've been invited to go to Cisco Live, Adobe Summit. It's the same thing. When I did Cisco Live and Adobe Summit as well, introduction to a roundtable with the CMO, featured on their YouTube channel, and all these events that they created for the influencers, knowing that these people are going to be tweeting and posting and creating content around it. It's a great opportunity, but also bringing the influencers together. That was half the fun, for me attending and getting to finally meet in person, like Joel Comm and some of these people in the industry that I never met before. So yeah, there is a formula. I don't want to overly focus on that on certain areas because it might be a little bit different for B2B than B2C. But yes, there is a framework, and there are some repeatable elements that will work regardless of industry.
Yeah, B2B is something most people don't think of as influence. And I love that you brought up the employee example. And I think that might be kind of an interesting way to kind of talk a little bit how that's different, how it can be treated different in its impacts, because it might be, in my opinion, it might be like an underserviced influencer area of opportunity, because most people do think B2C, like here's some insoles, will you wear them and talk about them? But in B2B, it's very different. What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, in B2B, the people that can best monetize their influence are salespeople, right? They get paid commission a lot of the time, or bonuses. So when you look at it that way, they have an incentive to go out there and crush it in social media, to build up a robust network and to yield influence, because they're constantly sharing content around the subject that's related to their clients' needs and the products and services and solutions that their company provides. And, I do a lot of social selling trainings. I always find there's always 10% or 15% of salespeople, they get that and they're very successful. LinkedIn has what's called the social selling index, and all these things I talk about. Those salespeople that are more active in social are, statistically, the data shows that they will do better. They will, reach or surpass their quota, and what have you. So, when we look at it that way for the B2B, we look at, we're not going to have a lot of individual bloggers. If we worked for Coca-Cola, we might have some employees that have blogs about recipes that include Coca-Cola, like Coca-Cola brisket, or I don't know, right? In B2B, you're not going to find that to be the case. So I think in B2B, in many cases, the content is all being created by marketing. And the advent of these employee advocacy programs was marketing creating all this content and saying, geez, if our salespeople would share this content, we'd get so many more leads, right? And the salespeople are saying, well, the content you're creating is maybe too self-promotional. Maybe it's just not aligned with the sort of things that I hear from my customers, their needs. We know that B2B buyers are also in social media, and they're also doing research in social media, right? So we want our salespeople, and I would say any outward-facing person in your company. It could be in marketing, could be in customer success, public relations, corporate communications. We really want them out there and sharing our voice and becoming more and more influential, so that indirectly they're bringing more people to us, driving more traffic to our website, right? And when you really get going, instead of hiring that content marketing agency to write content for you, more and more you tap into your own internal employees to write that content. And that's where I think it begins to be really powerful, because I think, B2B marketing budgets, there's an incredible amount that's spent on content. I don't know what the exact number is, but even there, we can then look into influencers that aren't employees to help with that content as well. But just from the employee perspective, it's really looking at the sales team. I would look at the executive team as well, because if you want other people in your company to be active in social, it really starts on top, right? I would want my executives to be the supreme influencers. And while we've had these employee advocacy programs for some time, the approach was a marketing-centric approach that said, here's a tool. We're going to just feed the tool with our content, our blog posts, our white papers. And, you, employee, Mr. or Mrs. Employee, you're going to opt into this. And you're just going to automatically share this to your network 3 times a week, right? And employees are like, I'm not going to do that. This is my personal network. I'm not going to spam them with your promotions, right? And so inevitably, these employee advocacy programs have failed. The ones that were successful had a component of training in them, right? We're going to train you, Mr. and Mrs. Employee, on how to better leverage social media, starting with for your job, which are the people in sales, but also just for your personal branding. We realize that you are an employee for life. And even if you leave this company, you might end up being our customer, our partner. You might introduce someone that becomes our customer or our employee. So we want to invest in helping you create a personal brand, helping you learn how to use social media professionally for what you do, and even for, your side hustle or what you do on the weekend, right? And those companies with training programs are the ones where people buy into it. They want to participate in those programs, and they see the value in sharing that content that marketing creates as part of their job. And I would go as far as saying we can now replicate this training program for employees and apply it to those influencers that are customers or even not customers. I met with a brand in Southeast Asia, in Singapore specifically, and they go, Neal, we have this group of nano influencers. They post all the time about us, but their content could be better. We want to actually help them create better content. We want to help them take better photos, take better videos, become better copywriters. I said, yes, exactly. That's the training where you can actually bring employees and customers and outside influencers together as part of this training, where all these people that are influencers to your brand, you are helping them become more influential. And I think that is, going forward, I talked about creating these sort of influencer marketing programs. I think that training is an essential part. And I think the ROI is huge. And in fact, it's like when I do sales training, social selling trainings, I tap into those people in the company that are already using LinkedIn or social media in a compelling way. And I use them as role models. Now you can reach in your influencer program and say, Olivia, her video creation is amazing. We're going to have Olivia come in, and we'll pay Olivia to teach, but we're going to have Olivia come in and teach all you how to create better videos as an influencer, right? And that becomes really, really powerful over time. And that training, it keeps people in your program. It keeps them incentivized. You make better friends with them. You add more value to them. You can just imagine just the various benefits you get from that sort of engagement when you include that training component.
When you deploy one of those programs, or you're pitching a client. So if you're an agency and you're going, hey, we should be doing this. What's your response when somebody's going, hey, you're training our employees to be more attractive to our competitors to be scooped? I think I have a couple of responses to that, but I'm just curious what your take is on that. I feel like that there's some, in leadership would be a little hesitant because they're thinking that they should not be focusing on trying to promote their employees' social feeds. What would be your sort of take on that, and what evidence do you have to support it?
Yeah, I'm going to share a personal story. When I got married, my wife has had jobs off and on, but when we got married, she was a housewife. So every day at lunch, I was calling her. Hey, what's going on? And she'd be like, nothing. It's like, why are you calling? And after a few days, I stopped doing that. It's like, why am I calling, right? Do I feel like maybe she's going off somewhere, doing something that I wouldn't approve of, right? It's like, what am I thinking? So I think it's the same with your employees. If you're worried about your employees going elsewhere, that is a problem. That's not a social media problem. That's a company problem, right? That's, you don't have the right people, or they don't like your company. So, that's, if
That's
you
a
want
solid
people,
response. Yeah. And I
yeah,
think,
if you want your people to like your company more, you want to invest in them, right? I think the concept of corporate training it has always been there, right? We HR spends 1% of their budget on training. So this is just a different type of training. It is making them more publicly seen and more publicly attractive. But the idea is that even if they only stay at your company a few months, they might move on, and that's fine. It's not a lifelong marriage for both parties, that you're going to get the ROI even from those few months, and from that goodwill, that employee for life concept, the goodwill that you create by investing in them. I think, that's going to pay dividends for you, especially because you're training them on that public channel, which is social media, where they're going to talk about your brand.
well, why would
So
you leave? You're like, your employee's actually going, you're helping me, I think that's the shift, that is happening now, is people that want to be part of a company that feels that the company really is there to help them and further their careers. And the business necessarily doesn't have that same view of people are employees for life. I think accepting that employees are with you for a period of time, and you want them leaving better than when they came in, that creates a lot of draw, I think, for businesses to attractive for people to want to work there. And the end result is they end up staying longer.
yeah, if you're worried about that, then you're worried, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I was probably subconsciously worried about my wife, right? It's the same thing. You're worried, and that's why you focus on that part. And I think I used to hear that pushback a lot more, 10 years ago. But the fact of the matter is, the data shows that 98% of employees are active on at least one social media profile. We're talking digital natives that are a majority of the workforce. So, I'd rather you accept the fact and try to work with that fact and positively influence it, rather than, trying to completely reject its existence, which is what you do when you say, we're not going to train our people on social media. We don't want them on social media. We wish social media had never existed. That's just not the reality of today.
Yeah, it's like integrating into their life and making it them feel they're also part of the business in a way that you're also proud of your employees. That says a lot, I think, for people that are looking at your business, that you're proud enough to do that. And the more they see your employees, behind the scenes and stuff, I think that gives another perspective that is maybe another form of influence. It's not about showing necessarily the best photo of your shoes or your product, but all sometimes like behind the scenes going, here's us actually receiving a shipment. I mean, I think people are looking more for that sort of like what's behind the, this facade of marketing, and I think employees have an opportunity to do it in a way that's meaningful.
So imagine this. You're a brand that's targeting, teenagers, high schoolers, you're the 10 to 25 crowd, let's just say that way.
Mm.
And you're looking for interns. And on your Instagram channel, you post reels about the TikTok training that you gave your employees, and that you had a photo studio set up, and you help your employees create these awesome TikToks. Check it out. We're going to upload them reels. And by the way, we have, 10 openings for, interns. They're not paid, but you're going to get to do cool stuff like this while you're here. I mean, imagine how many people would love that are in that target audience that would love that opportunity. So,
Totally. Yeah.
So yeah, you could, I think at the end, it becomes a pull when it becomes public knowledge. We talk about employer branding. I'm not, that this is more of an HR thing, but it becomes part of your brand as a company and your culture. And I would absolutely be promoting that in social. And I think you're going to find that you might lose people because of the social media, but I think you're going to gain a lot more, actually.
What about someone that's an influencer that is not super savvy with social? They're an older demographic, but we're talking sophistication, like, B2B, we'll say multi-stakeholder sale, bigger business. You and I touched on this last time, and having influencers at a different level where it's like intellectual influence as opposed to content creation. And maybe it's, posting their perspective on a particular industry and, things of that nature, where you're not really sending them to test your product, but maybe it's to come and experience your company and kind of open the kimono so that they will talk about it. But they're still creating content, but they're not like making TikToks. How, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, where I'm going with this?
I do. So, I mean, I think it's still, if we're talking about those are not employees, but external influencers, it's the same concept, right? Instead of them posting on Instagram, they're creating blog posts, they're publishing podcasts,
On Medium or something. Yeah.
or Medium, or maybe they're blogging on LinkedIn in addition to doing LinkedIn Lives, what
Yeah.
have you. And I think, for those people, it's the same thing. You want to influence them and you want to bring them into your company. And that Talk About event is a very popular way of doing that. Now, since we can't do the annual conferences, we're now doing virtual conferences. We're doing virtual summits, virtual webinars. These are great avenues to say, you know what, we really wanted to talk about your perspective on our industry. Would you come on our webinar? And a lot of these people would. Some might require some sort of incentive to do that, especially if you want them to promote your webinar to their audience. But most of them will. I mean, the more influence your company has, the better known your brand name is, the more they probably want to do it. So that's definitely a way in which you bring them into your sphere of influence, and you're now co-creating content with them because that webinar now becomes something repurposable, right? And you're getting the ROI of the email addresses that are added into your lead generation marketing automation machine. So when you work at that level, it's a little bit different, but there is sort of this path that you could, or maybe, hey, we'd love to invite you to be on our podcast.
Well, is that kind of meta? I mean, that's what you and I are doing.
Well, more and more businesses are doing podcasts. They're starting to realize that it's an important marketing medium. But yeah, you're right. Most companies still are not doing it. They miss out on the opportunity. So it's probably more like the webinar, which maybe they'll repurpose into YouTube. It might be an interview for their blog, but it is sort of keeping in touch with them, trying to get their input, showcasing their input, and trying to develop a long-term relationship out of that.
Extraordinarily awesome. I mean, you have single-handedly turned me into rethinking influence. If you recall the first part of our first episode that no one ever heard because it didn't get recorded, but
I think we took it up a notch.
Yeah, it did. And it's, to me, this is, I think we really did a good job, I think, with explaining this. Is there anything that you think as we wrap up here that you'd like to share that kind of brings it together and lets people know where they need to go next and where's influence going now? Like, where's the future of influence and where could they be just keeping an eye on the future of sort of what the changes are? We mentioned podcasts. That's kind of current. What else is there?
Well, I think at the end of the day, I really like to dumb this stuff down, for lack of a better word. There's 4 major content mediums, and there's a bunch of social networks where people distribute content from these content mediums. It's obviously audio, video, text, and visual. And visual is often photo, like Instagram or anywhere in social media. It could be stuff like infographics, but anyway, now I'm getting more complex. So when you think about it that way, when I look at influencers, and I know that this industry began with Instagram, but the life of content on Instagram is really freaking short. Pardon my français. You might get on the discovery page. I still have content that gets likes and views from a year or two ago, but it's very limited. It's ephemeral. It's up and it's down. And every network is different. I mean, Pinterest, the life of a pin is probably the longest if it's successful, but regardless, it's very short. I am a big fan of both creating and reaching out to influencers in the other content mediums, because if it's a blog, it's on Google, it's indexable, it's searchable, it has a long lifespan. If it's a podcast, it's on Apple Podcasts, it's on every iPhone, right? The app at least. And it's indexable, it's searchable, it has a long shelf life. And the same with YouTube video, right? It's indexable, searchable, long shelf life. I think that we're going to see more influencer marketing focusing on these areas rather than the social media that comes and goes, although it's still important in terms of brand awareness. I mean, we can't avoid the fact that it's very popular, and I think that's going to be a byproduct of all this. But I do think, and I've been telling content creators and businesses to focus on the indexable and searchable. Now, blogging is really interesting because blogging is an area where companies still can rule people. They have the resources. They can hire a content marketing agency and knock out thousands of pieces of content, which an individual blogger could not, right? No matter how many guest bloggers they have. So I think that companies are actually at an advantage when it comes there. But in podcasting and YouTube, I think people still have the advantage. And I think these are areas where companies can tap into either themselves becoming content creators or leveraging influencers in this space. And I know we tend to think of podcasting as maybe more B2B and YouTube as more B2C, but I think they're both appropriate for each one of those. So if you're looking where I think we're going to see more activity, and I mean, think of it this way, we reach out to an influencer, we get 500 likes, awesome. We reach out to a podcaster, we get 500 downloads within 30 days, and that content lives forever. We might get a backlink from the podcaster in the show notes. Instead of engaging with our content for 2 seconds, they've engaged with our audio interview for 30 minutes or an hour, or a video where they've engaged with us for a few minutes. Or, I mean, a blog post is the same, but that's where I think that, as I take a step back as in my older age and I look back at the whole landscape as we enter our second decade of social media, it's still really important, but we need to keep our eye on the ball, and we can't let all this, everyone needs to be on TikTok. And, we need to be really clear as to what is meaningful content, what is meaningful engagement, what are the meaningful content mediums, and where can we play to the strengths that social media users have over brands. And I think those are areas that I would be looking at in the near future.
And I really thank you for wrapping it that way, because you just highlighted the areas that are probably more sustainable in terms of effort. I'm not sure if you've experienced this, but I've had some of my catalog from my year season 1 just out of the blue just explode. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's doing better now than it did, so much better now than whenever it first came out. Do you ever have that with some of your content from the past?
Yeah, I have one podcast episode that is it's from like 4 months ago, but it has twice the number of downloads in all my other episodes. So clearly, it's not just people subscribe and download, it's people are also doing searches for episodes and downloading unique episodes from a number of podcasts. It's the same sort of search engine that Google has and that YouTube has. So I agree. And some of my best performing content on my blog isn't content I just published. In fact, it takes a while for content to be, it gets indexed in Google pretty quickly, but to build up traction in Google, I think there was a report that said most of the top 10 search results in Google is from content from 1.5 to 2.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. That's sort of the sweet spot. If it gets older than that, then you have competition with newer content, right? So, and YouTube, do a search for anything on YouTube, the first 10 results are usually from within the past 5 years. Your Instagram post from 5 years ago is not going to get you much traction. So when you think about it that way, the longevity, longevity. Okay, we'll go with that. It's compelling, right? And that's why I think the focus that everybody's focused on, the Instagram, the TikTok, the here and now, the few hundred likes, and the really shallow engagement, although it's like a billboard, it does get in front of people's face, and that's important for some, especially consumer-facing brands. But for other companies, really think about this holistically. And I think you'll see the opportunities and potentially greater ROI when you work in these other platforms and other content mediums.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for being on the show. You're unbelievably such a wealth of knowledge. And it feels like, we probably could do 3 or 4 other podcasts on different topics and have just as of a great episode. So if you're up to it, I'd love to have you back on the show.
Oh, I'd love to. I'm already, the Age of Influence, this book on influencer marketing I published in March, and I'm already conceptualizing my next book, which I hope to bring in, because, it's not just about, influence marketing is all gray, but it's also about content. It's about social media. It's about algorithms. It's about engagement. It's about a lot of different things that every brand needs their own unique digital recipe. But I think influencer is the one ingredient that most get wrong and just ignore, because I think it's going to make their food taste bad when it can add the most flavor to your food. We'll end with that analogy.
Nice. Well, with that, we're going to make it a tasty second round. And thank you so much for being on the show. How can people follow you?
Sure. Well, my name is Neal Schaffer, which is everywhere on social media, nealschaffer.com. I am the real Neal, so it's Neal. And there's a few of us Schaffers out there, so be careful. It's Schaffer. The name of my book is called The Age of Influence, sold everywhere. And I also have a podcast if you want to learn more about this concept of digital influence called the Maximize Your Social Influence Podcast.
There you have it. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Scott. It was awesome.
All right, everyone. Well, there you have another episode of the Groundswell Marketing Podcast. And if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it. Just go to groundswell.fm and hit the mic. Leave me a voicemail and tell me what you love, what you hate, what you like to hear. I'd love to hear it all. So until next time, mahalo.